Thank you, Zimbabwe, for tuning in to yet another informative edition of your program. This is Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness, and I am Wadzanai Manyore. Now, if you look at UN Agenda Vision 2030, if you look at SDG number 12, it talks of responsible production and sustainable consumption. Now, we are going to be looking at sustainability in agriculture, aligning it to agribusiness. Now, if you look at issues surrounding sustainability, we are talking of farming practices which are profitable to the individual, to the farmer. We are also talking of farming practices that are environmentally sound and good for communities. Now, in this particular episode, we are going to be looking at livestock production in general and the establishment of pastures that are suitable for the livestock right here in Zimbabwe. And once again, I have taken the liberty of inviting Tinashe Mugadza. He is the development manager of SCCs right here in Zimbabwe. Tinashe, it's a pleasure having you with us once again.
Thank you so much, Wadzanai. Great pleasure to be on the show.
We are talking about sustainability, which speaks to the longevity of a project, of an enterprise. As we get into our discussion, let us talk of the general importance of livestock. I understand that some of our audience there at home, they are not farmers.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, each one of us wants to eat. We want to have a balanced diet for our health, definitely. Let us talk of the general importance of livestock production to all our viewers.
Thank you so much. Like you said, for all of us, whether we're farmers or not, whether we're directly involved into farming or not, at the end of the day, we prepare a meal, and a portion of it, because you mentioned livestock production, would be a meat that serves us on the protein to ensure a balanced diet. So if we do well in livestock production, if farmers do well in livestock management, then it means all those that are even not directly involved in agriculture or in livestock production, they can get their meat as they get into a butchery, or as they buy their chickens, they can get meat. So that is extremely important. Coming to the farmers, communal and commercial farmers who are involved, livestock production, it's a business.
Yes,
it's a business. They look after their chickens, they look after their their cattle, their goats, and because it's a business, they can sell and do other things, whether they sell to buy other crops, your maize, your groundnuts, etc. They can sell also and buy other to develop their businesses. They sell cattle to buy tractors, etc. Some, they look after chickens and then they sell, they pay school fees for their children. So it's business, and contributes mainly, into improving our livelihoods. And it also serves as a wealthy bank for communal and commercial farmers. Like I said, someone is looking after 100 chickens, it's a project, it's a bank. Someone is looking after a head of cattle, it's a bank. I'm very happy that you said we are going to talk about pastures, because I tell you, Wadzanai, since 2015 to date, as a nation, we have lost over 150,000 head of cattle due to poor nutrition. So that saddens me, and that worries me a lot, because it's something that we can do and something that we can correct. And the estimated value of what we have lost so far, it's over 60 million USD, which is quite a lot. So I'm happy that we are going to talk about pastures to at least try and correct the losses that we have been involved in as a nation.
Yes, thank you so much, Tinashe. To those who are just catching up with us, this is Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness. We are talking of pasture development and pasture management for livestock production in Zimbabwe. Now, Tinashe, as we are getting into our discussion, like you look at livestock head as a bank, as wealth that we have as a country, and you're saying since 2015 we have lost well over 60 million in United States dollars, given the value of the cattle that we have lost as a nation. Now, looking at as we forge way towards attaining Vision 2030 as a country, we are talking of becoming an upper middle class economy by year 2030. And livestock production plays a critical role in terms of wealth creation to the various farmers in our country. Let us talk about the wide range of pastures that are available.
Pastures, they're very broad. We have got grasses, we have got legumes on the grasses. You also have got your sorghums on it. But today, I'd like us to focus about Lucerne,
okay,
which is scientifically known as Medicago sativa. and commonly known as alfalfa. This all just means the best fodder, and it's also being referred as the king of fodder because it yields large amounts of quality hay that is very rich in protein and that is highly palatable, highly digestible, over 70% digestibility. So that I think today we can focus more on that. Its palatability, it also means quite a range, quite a number of animals can feed on Lucerne. This talks to the cattle, talks to the goats, the sheep, the chickens, because of its palatability.
Thank you so much, Tinashe. You are telling us of palatability and how that is compatible in livestock production. We are talking of goats, sheep, cattle, and even chickens, the wild range. Now let us talk about the establishment of this Lucerne. How is it established? I'm just going to give you a few minutes as we round off the segment.
Thank you so much. For us to get the best Lucerne crop, that is palatable, very rich in protein, and highly digestible, it starts with establishing it properly. Thank you for the question. So when you want to establish a good crop, it starts with correcting, it starts with a good soil. So now when we talk about soil, two things come to my mind. Number one is the soil fertility. Number two is the soil pH. To get this, we recommend and encourage farmers to undertake a comprehensive soil analysis. A comprehensive soil analysis is going to tell us the state of our soil in terms of the pH, the state of our soil in terms of the nutrients. On pH, Lucerne, though it can grow on quite a range of soils, and it prefers those that are well drained. On pH, Lucerne prefers a pH of at least 6 pH meter reading, which means it doesn't do well in acidic soils. On fertility, so when a farmer does a comprehensive soil analysis, they get a recommendation and a prescription based on the state or on the amount of nutrients that are available in the soil. You know, a crop, it needs your nitrogen, your potassium, your phosphorus, and all other wide range of micronutrients. So the state of the soil, what's in the soil already, is going to help us to prescribe that this field, this area, we need this amount of nitrogen, this amount of phosphorus, this amount of potassium.
I tell you I'm going to have to cut you short on that note. Viewers, on that note, we are going to go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the second segment of your program. Stay tuned. Thank you, viewers, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness. Now we are discussing pasture establishment, aligning it to livestock production in Zimbabwe. Earlier on, before we went to the break, Tinashe Mgadza here was telling us that given periods from 2015 up to date, we have lost well over 60 million USD in terms of value of the beef cattle that we've been losing as a country. Now, viewers, we encourage you to be a part of these conversations. Feel free to get in touch with me, the producer, Wadzanai Manyore, on 0772-807-506. Alternatively, you can like our Facebook page, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. You can also leave your comments and suggestions on our YouTube channel, Agribusiness with Wadzanai. We are also now available on Twitter. Our Twitter handle there is at Agribusiness 110. Now, Tinashe, we are in the second segment of our program. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
I'm going to have you pick off from where we left off, the establishment of the Lucerne pasture. Can you take from there?
Thank you so much. So we're talking about the soil pH, the importance of soil pH. So as I've just said, Lucerne does well on a pH that is of at least a 6 pH meter reading. It doesn't do well on acidic soils, in acidic conditions. And just generally, when we plant Lucerne in an acidic soil, that's a pH meter reading, below the 6 that I've just said. We then make the micronutrients unavailable for the plant, despite them being required in small amounts, but they play a critical role. I give you a general example. You are preparing your meal, and if there's no salt, the meal won't taste nice.
Yes.
But we need just the correct proportion or correct amount of soil. If you over-apply or if you under-apply, that compromises a meal. That's the same with the micronutrients and the importance of pH. Let's go on the soil fertility or the nutrients requirement. I said the comprehensive analysis is going to help us to prescribe soil by soil, the requirements of the nutrients requirements to establish Lucerne. But generally, I don't prefer to give general recommendation on the nutrients, because farmers, they will then end up not doing the soil analysis. But I'll just say it. If we need to use the general recommendation, when we are establishing, we need a basic application of 300 kgs of compound D as we are planting. When we have set the soil pH correct, the soil nutrients correct, the next thing is to prepare the land correctly. On preparing the land, farmers should aim to achieve a fine and even seed bed. That even seed bed will help us to get a good seed soil conduct. It's fortunate that I have brought a sample of Lucerne seed here.
Yes.
I want to show you. I don't know if it's on the camera, so that our viewers can also see.
Okay.
You see the seed size of Lucerne.
It's very minute.
It's very small, very tiny. It's very tiny. So if the soil, the seed bed is not prepared to a fine tooth, then we are risking a good germination.
Yes.
We are risking a good germination. So when we have prepared our field to a fine tooth, then we are ready to actually plant the crop. So on planting, farmers should always ensure a good sowing depth. A good sowing depth, I'll give you for clay soils and loam soils, an average of 10 millimeters is advisable.
Okay.
When we are planting in sand soils, an average of 18 to 25 millimeters is advisable. Talking to the seed size of Lucerne, as you can see, Wadzanai, so it means, because it's small, it means the amount of stored energy that is needed to support the development of the seedling is limited. So if farmers plow too deep or sow too deep, then we risk to have a good crop emergence.
Okay.
So what is important is the correct seeding depth on planting. Number two, when we are aiming to have our correct seeding depth, is the seed rate. For Lucerne, when we are planting under irrigation, we recommend farmers an average seed requirement of 25 kgs per hectare. When we are doing under dryland, we recommend from 20 to 25 kgs. But the good thing about Lucerne is a self-thinning crop. So it's advisable to overpopulate than to underpopulate.
I understand that we have well over 50 varieties of the Lucerne pasture. It is Lucerne, yes, but there are well over 50 varieties. Now let us talk of the differentiation of these varieties and those that you would recommend for our Zimbabwean farmers. Some are in Masvingo, some are in Karoi, some are in Rusape. What type of variety would you recommend to these farmers who are in different geographical locations of our country?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's a very good question. Very good question, because when you've got everything right, you need to have a good variety. Yes. If you've got everything right and the wrong variety, you will fail. So a good variety is advisable. Farmers, a good variety or the correct variety farmers should choose is based on three things. Number one is based on the soil type. Number two is based on the climatic conditions, is also based on the use. Okay. I will talk about the climatic conditions. It talks, number one, to the amount of rainfall or the moisture availability. That is, if you've got irrigation and you've got dry land. So when you don't have irrigation, you obviously should plant the drought tolerant ones. Also, it takes to tolerance to low temperature. That's during winter if we are in Zimbabwe. So you also need to have a variety. If you have got irrigation, that you can support your crop during winter post the natural rains that we get, you also need a variety that you can do all year round.
Okay.
But all these varieties, they are coded on domains levels from domains level number 1 up to number 11, and these domains levels plays a critical role. Your domains levels from number 6 going up to 11, they are less dormant.
Okay.
So less dormant just means they are more winter active. So during winter you can get up to 20% of their growth. Lucerne generally it's a summer crop, but those that are winter active or that are less dormant, you can still grow them in winter. You can still do them in winter. So in other words, you get your crop, you can benefit from your crop all year round. Then also those that have got a domains of 1 to 5, they are dormant varieties, which means that they are less active during winter.
Okay.
So in other words, they have got little or no growth or productivity during winter. And it also speaks to the use that I have mentioned earlier on. This variety of dormant 6 to 11, they've got a crown that is above the ground. So the crown that is above the ground is talks that you can't graze on that. You can only use it to cut and feed or make silage or make hay. So on that group again, the stand life or the crop stand life is also reduced because you are yielding your crop all year round. Okay. But this one, they're also the high yielders. You get the best because imagine the whole year you're benefiting from Lucerne. The domains of 1 to 5.
Tinashe, I'm gonna have to cut you short on that note of domains. Viewers, we are gonna go on a short commercial break. We'll be right back with this and more in the third and final segment of your program. Stay tuned. Thank you, viewers, for staying tuned to Agricultural New Directions, Agribusiness. We are in the third and final segment of our program where we are talking of pastures, establishment and management. And I am here with Tinashe Mugadza, the development manager at Resouces. Now, earlier on, before we went to the break, Tinashe was telling us of the various varieties and how one can select their varieties according to their soil conditions, their climatic conditions, and even the use of that Lucerne variety, what they need that for. Now, as we move right along, Tinashe, let us talk about management of this pasture that has been established. You have planted, you spoke of land preparation, you have talked of the actual planting. Now let us talk about the management. The crop has emerged from emergence. How do you manage your crop?
I'll talk 3 things mainly. Number 1, it's your weeding or keeping your crop weed free. Most farmers, they think if it's not maize or groundnuts, then it can grow.
Yeah, but because cattle are going to graze it anyway.
Yes, but that's not the issue. We need to keep it weed free. So weed free, the best way would be as we establish, we can make use of pre-emergence herbicides to make sure that we've dealt with weeds before our Lucerne establishes, and also preparing the land well is also going to help us to manage weeds. As soon as the crop establishes, it can manage weeds because it covers the ground very well. Number 2 on the management, it's the pests and diseases. But if you've managed well the weeds, the main causes of the major pests and diseases that we have. But I urge farmers to always scout and look after their crop so that when they identify anything, because there are quite range of pests, there are quite range of diseases, when they identify anything, they can check with their agronomists that are around.
Yes.
But what I urge farmers is keeping it weed free. That will save us from all these diseases and the pests. Now the third one is to manage nutrients, because Lucerne is a perennial crop, so it has to be managed. The nutrients has to be managed. This speaks to all the nitrogen, the phosphorus, and micronutrients. But I want to talk specifically about the potassium. Lucerne, as it establishes, requires a small amounts of potassium. But however, this increases with the growth of the plant. Potassium plays an important role in Lucerne. Number one, it makes the crop more healthy. Number two, it boosts the immune system of the crop. Number two, it helps us to have higher quantities of dry matter. And it also helps us on the palatability of the Lucerne that we have mentioned earlier. So managing the nutrients is important. So every time when farmers cut or harvest their Lucerne, it is advised, we recommend farmers to then top dress with potash fertilizers at an average rate of 40 to 50 kgs per hectare. But also those that are, we have planted Lucerne mainly in paddocks, and they see crop is having deficiencies of nitrogen, they can also apply ammonium nitrate at a rate of 50 to 80 kgs per hectare. I didn't mention about nitrogen earlier on because Lucerne is a legume, and it uses the Rhizobium bacteria for biological nitrogen fixation. So that helps the Lucerne to make adequate nitrogen available for the crop use.
Yes, we have just talked about management. Now let us talk about harvesting. Looking at harvesting, I understand that there are a lot of issues when it comes to harvesting. Our viewers there at home, the most pertinent question that they have at the moment is, how soon can I start harvesting? Soon after, establishment, when can I start expecting to harvest? And what are the intervals? When, say, you have said that some might have paddocks, ndopota ndichivhurira mombe kupinda paddock, pama intervals zvakamira sei in terms of the cattle getting into the paddock and grazing, the intervals after 2 weeks, monthly, weekly?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. A very important question. I would say the first cutting, first grazing, or the first harvest, as we have termed it, should always be when our crop is showing the first flower. It has to be between the first flower and 25% of the field flowering.
Okay.
That is the best time for the first cut. That is important because it gives us a very good hay.
Okay.
Number two, when we have harvested for the first time, we then come on an interval of 35 to 42 days, which is about a month, a month and a week to a month to 2 weeks. That is the correct interval. But it's good to always ensure proper and correct rotational, especially if it is grazing. Rotational grazing is advised so that we don't overgraze our crop because that affects the regrowth of it. When you are cutting, we need to make sure that we leave at least 10 centimeters so that we don't disturb the crown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I understand that we have spoken of the harvesting intervals and even how soon can a farmer start to harvest. Let us talk of the methods that are available when it comes to harvesting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Quite a range of it, but I would say two mainly. Number one is either you cut or and then number two, or you graze. I'll talk about the cutting. So cutting, you can cut the crop like the period that we have said between the first flower and 25% of it, or on the intervals of 35 to 42 days. Farmers can cut and feed their animals, cutting from the field and feed our animals. We can also cut to make hay. We can also cut to make silage. Hay and silage, they helps us, especially those farmers that are into that do not have irrigation, so that we can store our food, we can conserve the food, the hay, throughout the dry periods when there are no rains, and we can help our animals to have balanced diet throughout the year. Number two, on grazing, we can just let our animals in, they graze on those intervals, as I have mentioned, of 35 to 42 days. But on grazing, there is an important issue. Farmers that they should always look into the issues of bloat or bloating.
Okay.
Because if farmers, they don't look into that issue, we affect our animals. So the key things to manage that and to avoid our animals, suffering from bloat, it's number one, we need to avoid grazing immature Lucerne crop.
Okay. Immature Lucerne crop causes bloating in animals.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, especially that which is still too fresh and lush. We should avoid that. Number two, we should avoid grazing hungry animals, especially when the Lucerne crop is wet. But to do that, it is advised to feed roughage ahead of grazing Lucerne.
Okay.
Yeah, in other countries they are using the rumen pellets, which you can also use to deal with issues to do with bloat.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tinashe. This was a very a pertinent episode, which you have enlightened our farming community with issues surrounding pastures. Most of them are, in winter in Zimbabwe, it's a dry season. Hakunenge kusina mafuro. They end up getting stressed. They don't know what to do with their animals. And that is whereby we suffer huge losses in beef cattle production in Zimbabwe. It was a pleasure having you with us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's always a great pleasure talking about pastures to make sure that our livestock production in the country we are bettering it.
Yes, there you heard it, viewers. This was pasture production, aligning it to livestock production in Zimbabwe. From me, your host, Wadzanai Manyore, and the crew behind the scenes, have yourselves a fabulous evening. Thank you for watching.